you don't exist. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheap again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the first part of What If Naruto Gets Spider-Man's Suit? Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of Juubi no Shinju on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Richard Parker gave a tired and sad sigh, looking out the window of the plane. His brown eyes held loss, sadness, and mental age of a man who looked ready to give up on the world. In his hand he held a nearly empty glass of champagne, the bottle held tightly in his other hand. Another bottle in the seat next to him, ready to be drunk when he finished the one he had. The last 3 months had been worse than hell could ever be, on him and his wife. They were going to have a child, a boy. They had decorated his nursery and everything. They had the blue walls lined up with many stuffed animals and toys, a crib and everything needed for the years they would have in taking care of a baby. Unfortunately, fate had other plan. Their happiness at having another Parker in the family was shattered when the child came in that hospital room. The child, to which they were to name Peter, was born pre-born, his small, fragile body not able to withstand birth. He died before he could even take a breath. It wrecked Richard and Mary immensely. Even with the support of their friends and family, the two could never come back from their tragedy. His wife, who looked to be twice her age from her depression, would be seen nearly always in the nursery, dried tears in her face as she looked at a stuffed bear. If not that, she would walk the halls like a lost spirit, her eyes blank with loss and showing a broken woman. He, like his wife, had been in a depressed state. But unlike Mary, Richard used his pain on his work. He would nearly be in his office 247, much to the disapproval of his brother and sister-in-law, scolding him for not comforting his wife. However, what he was working on, he needed to finish. He was mad. Pissed to hell. His son, before he even got to know him, was gone. Why? Why was fate so cruel? And he was not blind. How many others in the world had suffered the same fate? To lose their children at birth, or lose loved ones from disease and plague. He wanted to change that, to give people the happiness he couldn't have. So, with the help of his colleague and friend, Eddie Brocassar, they set off on a tough journey to create something that would revolutionize the world forever. They called it the Suit, a project based on something they discovered many years ago. It was to be the cure and means of healing humanity and putting an end to disease and illness. The initial project was deemed too dangerous to use, so they worked on a fresh start. Many years ago, Richard and a few of his colleagues discovered an amazing specimen. It was some sort of symbiotic organism, a goo, which bounded itself to one of the men. It wrapped around him, covering him completely. It granted him immense strength, speed, and agility. It amazed them all. However, there was a problem. It seemed that the symbiote drained the wearing of their energy, and once completely drained, kills them. They had managed to contain the symbiote for study, telling no one of what they found. Richard and Eddie had hoped to create a byproduct of the symbiote, one that would not kill its wearers, but instead help them by giving them life. And with the task at hand, Richard was on his way to Asia to meet up with Eddie, who had told him over the phone he might have found something to help with their project. He knew the risk of what he was doing, as he had been pushing away his family. The image of the disappointing glare Ben sent him at the airport popping into his mind. But if he could do this, make something that would save lives, then it would all be worth it. When his plane touched down on the ground, Richard got off. He spotted Eddie waiting for him, leaning against his truck. Greeting him, he got in and the two left the lot. "So, you said over the phone that you found something?" Richard asked, his tone tired and holding a bit of longing, hoping to be one step forward in finishing the suit. Eddie looking at his friend in pity, knowing full well what had caused his such sorrow. To lose a child was no doubt the worst pain a parent could get. If anything had happened to his son, Eddie Brock Jr., he didn't know what he would do. Nodding, Eddie reached behind his seat and took out a device. He handed it to Richard. Yeah, strange reading coming from the jungle a few miles from here. The reading are like nothing we've seen before. It could be like when we found that. He hinted, recalling to when they discovered the symbiote. Richard nodded as he looked at the reading, finding them strange indeed. Not of this world strange. Worth checking out. Anyone else know about this? He asked, cautious of any other groups or organizations showing up. Last thing they needed was SHIELD, or some similar organizations showing up. Eddie shook his head. Doubt it. The reading were small and seemed to pulse in random order. I've barely caught it myself if I wasn't here to meet an old friend and was close by. Anyone joining us? Again, Eddie shook his head. Decided it would be safer to keep this on the down low. So it's just you, me, and a couple of guides I got. Richard nodded and sat back to enjoy the ride as much as he could, hoping to calm his troubled thoughts. Grunting, Richard chopped through the large leaves and vines of the jungle as he trudged through, Eddie and the guides behind him. He looked down at the device in his grasp, following the directions of where the source of the energy was. He shook the device when the screen fluctuated a bit, making him sigh in annoyance. He was mentally tired, but forced himself to continue. He would not give up until he finished the suit, until he freed the world from pain and loss. He whacked the device lightly when the screen static again, before going blank, making him groan as he stopped in his tracks. What's wrong? Eddie asked. Richard raised the device, showing that it was off. The thing's dead. You forget to charge the battery of something? The brunette joked, making Eddie's eye twitch. It doesn't use batteries. You sure you didn't just break it? He shot back. He made the device himself, and if Richard broke it? Rolling his eyes, Richard just put the device in his coat pocket. No, I didn't break it. Thing just turned off. Luckily, I was able to see that we're close before it turned off. He looked around. They're somewhere in the middle of the jungle if he had to guess. Eddie looked around as well, before turning to the guides, telling them if there was anything they needed to know about the area. As he did that, Richard began walking around, looking at all the trees and ground. He came here to find something, and by the Parker luck in which unexpected things happen, he was going to damn well find it. Speaking of the Parker luck. Erg! Richard gave a yell when he suddenly fell down a covered hole in the ground. He barely heard Eddie scream his name as he fell into the deep darkness below. He counted at least a minute as he fell, panic spreading to him, fearing he was going to die. To him his fall seemed to go on forever, before he came to a stop as he crashed hard into the ground. He groaned, falling on his back and behind. Oh, typical Parker luck. Moaning a bit, as he felt his bones shaking from the impact, Richard painfully got up from the ground, his heart beating hard against his chest like a drum. Though I was going to die there, he muttered as he rubbed the back of his head, flinching when he felt a growing bump from when he hit his head. Looking around, he raised a brow when he saw that he was in a barely lit cave of earth, the only light coming from the hole he fell through. Speaking of the hole, he looked up and sighed when he saw just how far he fell. It was a miracle he was alive. He could faintly hear Eddie call for him. Great, just great. Sighing, he looked around, hoping to find a way out. Walking forward, he used the wall as a guide in the darkness. Walking around for a few minutes, he was surprised when he saw a faint light ahead of him. Hopeful that it was a way out, he walked toward it. Once reaching it, his eyes widened when he saw that the light came some kind of inner cavern. Looking around, he saw pieces of the wall and ceiling cracked and pieces fallen off, letting some light in. It was big, not too big, but enough to fit in a wide group. However, what truly caught his attention was the people that seemed to be floating over the ground, encased in some kind of bubble of energy. It was a man, blonde hair, wearing a white coat with red flames at the bottom, and a woman with long red hair. They were in an embrace, and getting closer, he could see that they were holding something in a secure grasp. Taking a step forward, his eyes widened when suddenly, strange symbols, to which his history of science and master degrees could never be able to recognize and read, appear all over the floor, shining brightly, forcing reaching to cover his eyes to not be blinded. The light illuminating the cavern, he waited for it to end, and when it did and the light vanished, to his surprise, he heard a sharp intake of breath and the sound of a baby's cry. Putting his arm down, his eyes widened when he saw that the bubble around the two had vanished, putting them on the ground. The man laid still, pulled away from the woman when hitting the ground, and Richard could see a hole in the man's abdomen. He just knew the man was dead, giving the dull eyes. Hearing gasping, Richard looked at the woman and saw that she too had a hole in her stomach. However, she seemed to be holding on tightly to her vanishing life as she held on gently to the bundle in her arms, to which Richard knew was the baby where the cries were coming from. Sor wa Naruto-chan, dejabu desu. Sobit ga dejabu nai Narudaru. It's okay, Naruto. Everything's going to be okay. The woman, the mother, whispered gently and lovingly to her son. Her voice weak, but she tried to be strong for her crying son. Hearing movement, she tensed and looked up, holding Naruto tighter to protect him. When she saw Richard, she threw him a glare, daring him to hurt her son. Seeing this, Richard put his hands up. Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you, he said softly, not moving an inch. The woman narrowed her eyes in confusion, not understanding what the man had said, but before she could do anything, she began coughing up blood, making Richard worry. Hey, don't move. You need help. I'll see if I can get help, he said, curing the fact that his walkie-talkie broke at the fall. Sure, he studies medical for a few years, but nothing in his brain could help right now. The woman needed a hospital, and fast. He turned to run back to where the hole was, hoping to get Eddie, when... Mate, wait! Stopping in his track, Richard turned his head to the panting woman, who looked at him with cautious but pleading eyes. She looked at his eyes for a few more seconds, before nodding softly. She looked at her whimpering son, a smile full of love aimed at him. Eishidaru, Naruto-chan. I love you, Naruto. She whispered softly at him, planting a soft kiss on the top of his head. She then looked at Richard, her eyes sad and pleading. Naruto no suwa o shite kudasai care nai shite kudasai hogo shite kudasai. Please take care of Naruto. Please protect him, please. She told him, her voice and eyes growing weaker. Wange shimasu. Please. Soon her eyes grew blank, showing that she had passed on. Richard quickly went to her, hoping that there was something he could do. Placing a finger on her neck, he sighed when he saw it was too late. He lowered his head in a soft prayer for the two dead parents, leaving the cavern quiet, with only the cries of the baby to echo around. Running a hand through his hair, Richard took a shaky breath as he looked at the parentless toddler. His eyes softening at the boy, he gently held him in his hand. Just like how he and Mary lost their son, this boy lost his parents, and from what he could see, this boy was barely a day old. If this was the work of fate, then fate was a sick bastard. It's okay now. Naruto, right, everything's going to be okay, he said gently to the baby. Slowly, the toddler began to calm down, his whimpers softening. When he was calmed, he opened his eyes, showing a deep ocean blue, to which Richard could say he had never seen such a deep blue before. Taking a better look at the boy, he saw that he already had a head of growing blonde hair, and taking a glance at the man, he saw that he inherited from his father. Strangely enough, on the boy's cheeks were whisker-like markings, 3 lines on either cheek. It could have been a trick of the light, but Richard could have sworn that for a split second, he saw the boy's blue eyes flash red. Shaking his head, he put it off as it being the light. I'm so sorry that this had to happen to you, Naruto. However, it seems that your mother entrusted me, a complete stranger, to take care of you. He smiled when Naruto reached up to his face in curiosity. Leaning forward, he gently placed his forehead on the child's, feeling Naruto feel his cheeks. We both lost someone very special to us, but I promise we won't go through this world alone. He carefully stood up, keeping a firm grasp on the blonde boy. The scientist looked at the dead couple in pity, but had a determined look in his eyes. I promise I will take good care of your son and make sure nothing happens to him. I swear on it, he said. He would need to get men down here to pick up the bodies. They deserved a proper burial. Looking around, he spotted a small hole at the wall, but big enough for him to squeeze through. He smiled down at the giggling boy. Let's go home, Naruto Parker. Won't your new mom be surprised? Naruto just giggled. And he was right. Mary was surprised, as were Ben and May, when he showed up with a baby after his trip. He explained to them what had happened, and while they were skeptic at some parts, they acknowledged it, feeling sorry for boy, and saw a connection between him and the childless parents. Richard smiled as he looked at his happy wife from the kitchen as she played with a giggling Naruto at the living room. The instant Mary picked the boy up, her depression instantly left her, granting her new energy and life, and was holding on to Naruto, as if fearing he would vanish if she let go. She was still sad at the loss of her unborn son, but the second she saw Naruto, something just clicked, like she was given a second change at being a mother. Feeling a hand on his shoulder, Richard looked up and smiled when he saw Ben, a glass of wine in his hand. Grabbing the offered glass, he sat back, his posture more relaxed than what it has been in the few months. Ben sat down next to him as the two Parker brothers looked at the giggling Naruto and gushing Mary. Ben looked at his brother. "How are you doing, Richard?" Ben asked, curious of the soft look in his brother's face. Without looking at him, Richard smiled. A true smile not seen since that day. I'm happy, Ben. After so long, I'm happy." Yes, his heart would always ache for Peter, but he knew that Naruto wasn't a replacement. No, he had promised his parents, and himself, that he would raise and take care of the blonde like he was his own son. No matter what, Naruto was now his son, now and forever. Ben smiled at his brother, truly happy for him. Things were looking up for the Parkers. 4 years later, Parker residence. A giggling 4-year-old Naruto Parker walked down the hallway of his home, wearing his red long-sleeve shirt and dark blue pajama pants with faces of Bugs Bunny on them. He and his father were playing hide and seek, but had to stop for a minute when he got a call. His mother was cooking, so he couldn't disturb her. He was promised cookies later on if he was good, and he wanted them. His mischief-filled blue eyes looked around for a place to hide for when his daddy was done. Opening the closet door, he looked inside to see if he could hide in there, but pouted when he saw it was filled with clothes and boxes. Looking around, he saw that the door to his dad's workroom was slightly open. He wasn't allowed in his daddy's special room, in fear of having his sweets taken from him. He might break something. And if he broke something, his mom wouldn't let him eat cookies. Naruto was a good boy. Good boys followed their mommy's rules. Good boys get cookies. However, he titled his head lightly to the side, similar to a fox. His dad's door was always closed. Always. He never left it open, not even by mistake. Being the curious boy he was, he slowly began to approach the door, looking behind him to make sure his dad didn't see him, and he didn't get in trouble. His small hands placed on the wooden door, he gently pushed, the door opening easily. Peeking inside, his eyes widened when he saw that the office was a mess. Papers were spilled on the floor, chairs tumbled over, and there was a shattered hole on the window which was slightly opened. His breath caught in his throat at the scary sight. Naruto turned his head out the room. "Dad? Dad?" Richard, who after finishing his call, was the dinner room alone. Haven just finished his daily video log when he heard his son calling to him. Hearing the slight panic in the boy's voice, Richard quickly got up and ran to him to make sure he was okay. Hearing the call coming from his office, he entered and his eyes widened in shock and panic when he saw the mess, Naruto standing at the side with a worried look in his face. Richard didn't say anything. He knew it wasn't Naruto's fault. No, it was much worse. He quickly ran to his desk, just as Mary entered. Haven also heard Naruto's voice. Gasping at the sight, she quickly picked Naruto up, making sure he wasn't hurt. She looked at her husband, hearing him curse under his breath. "It's gone," he said, looking at the table. "The USB for the formula is gone," he said, making Mary's eyes widen. He quickly moved and pulled out the drawer in the desk. Dumping all the contents carelessly on the floor, he carefully opened up a hidden compartment at the inner base. With a switch, he opened it, showing a file inside. Picking it up, he looked through it to make sure everything was there. It was. Sharing a worried glance with his wife, he went around the room, cleaning his chalkboards filled with formulas and packing all the necessary files, books, and items in his bag. As he did that, Mary with Naruto in her arms quickly went to pack his things. When everything that was needed was packed, the three quickly got in the car. Driving toward his Aunt May and Uncle Ben, Naruto sat in the back, holding his favorite stuffed fox with a worried look as his parents whispered amongst themselves. It was raining, making him flinch when he heard the loud bang of thunder. Seeing this, Mary had a loving look as she looked at her sweet boy. "It's okay, my little sunshine. Everything's going to be okay." she gently told him, making Naruto nod. Reaching his aunt and uncles, Naruto watched from the doorway as the adults talked. Seeing him, Aunt May tried to give him a soft smile. He tried to smile back, but couldn't when he saw his mother had tears going down her cheeks. "What do you mean you're leaving?" Naruto cried after hearing his parents say that they had to leave. "I don't want you to leave. Why can't I go with you?" he cried, tears falling heavy from his eyes. Mary was the same as her son, her eyes puffy and tears falling non-stop. It hurt her heart so much to have to do this. She tried to be brave, but just couldn't. Kneeling down to his level, she held her arms open to him. She was barely able to keep herself from falling back as Naruto crashed into her. She wrapped her arms around him tightly in an embrace, feeling her shirt get wet as Naruto cried against her. She took a shaking breath as she tried to hold her cries, running a hand softly through her baby boy's bright sun-kissed blonde hair. Oh, how she loved his hair. It was a bright blonde, like a small sun, which is why she called him her little sunshine. "I'm so sorry, my little sunshine. I'm so sorry." Pulling back a bit, she choked as she looked at the teary Naruto. Barely managing to put on a smile, she placed her hands on his whiskered cheeks, wiping his tears away. Memories of the times she would dress him up in fox outfits, always finding his whiskers beyond adorable, hit her, making her struggle to not cry even harder. But you father and we have some very important things to do. I'm sorry, but we can't take you with us." Placing her forehead against his, she choked as she looked into his sad eyes. "Naruto, her sweet Naruto, her baby boy. We need you to be brave, okay?" she asked. Choking back his own tears, Naruto nodded. Smiling, Mary placed a kiss on his forehead. "I love you. Always remember that." Naruto nodded again, muttering a small "I love you too." "Now, we need you to stay for your Uncle Ben and Aunt May in the meantime, okay?" Naruto nodded. Watching his wife and son give their final goodbyes, Richard felt the already there pit in his stomach grow. He had failed. He had promised his son's biological mother that he would take care of Naruto forever. Her final wish. And he failed, all because of the decisions he had made. He was a terrible father. And now, his choices were going to be the death of him and his wife, and leaving Naruto with another set of parents gone. Fate was a beach. Moving forward, he knelt down next to his wife and son, and pulled them into a tight group hug. He struggled to hold in his tears. Why was life so cruel? Ben and May watched with frowns at the sad family. The addition of Naruto and the Parker family was the best thing that had ever happened to them. He had unknowingly pulled Richard and Mary out of their depression, and even though he didn't have his parents' looks, they knew that blood or not, Naruto was their son. Haven been seen with the familiar spark in his eyes when he looked at his school books, unknowingly having the same growing interest in science as his parents. Genetics or not, Ben and May counted Naruto as a true Parker. They themselves see Naruto as their real nephew who they loved immensely. Pulling back a bit, Mary gulped down a sob as she unconsciously moved a stray bang from her son's face. Her fingers trimmed through the untamable mess that was her son's hair, recalling back to the weeks she spent trying to fix it, but later gave up. Haven grown to love his wild hair, and his blue eyes were like looking into the ocean. She chuckled sadly, knowing she would never get to see her son get chased by girls, as she knew he would grow up to be very handsome. He likes to read stories before bed, and likes to sleep with the door a bit open. Don't let him stay up past 10 or eat candy before dinner, she told Ben and May, her voice breaking up as she kept playing with Naruto's hair. Richard frowned sadly as he reluctantly pulled his wife up, feeling her begin to shake. Ben stepped forward and held his hand out to Naruto, smiling a bit at him. With a sad look, Naruto wiped his tears and grabbed his uncle's hand. He watched as his parents began to leave, sending him one last sad smile, before they got in the car and left. It would be the last time Naruto Parker saw his parents, as a week later, two men appeared at the door. The plan Richard and Mary Parker were in crashed, killing everyone on board. 12 years later. Blue eyes blinking, Naruto Parker shook his head as he snapped out of old memories. Sighing, he posted the latest picture he took by being the photographer for the school's news club on the bulletin board. Closing the glass case, he grabbed his skateboard which leaned against the wall. He walked off toward his locker, pulling his hand in the pocket of his black and orange jacket, his red backpack slung over his shoulder. He wore black pants and red and black sneakers, with a camera hanging on his chest. At the age of 16, he stood at a 5'7", and his blonde hair had reached down to his shoulders. It was still as wild as usual, but a bit more tamed. He had a bang falling over his forehead in between his eyes, and if he narrowed his eyes, it would give him a sexy look according to the female students, even more due to his whisker-like marks that women found wild and sexy. Around his neck were black and orange headphones, while on top of his head were familiar glasses. His father's glasses that when he put them on, his eyes suddenly adjust to see through them for some reason, same as when he takes them off. He likes to wear them when he's doing homework or working on home projects. According to his Uncle Ben and Aunt May, it makes him look a lot like his father. Naruto, after much studying, not only became one of the most handsome students in the school, but one of, if not, the smartest student there was. Though he likes to keep his grades average, given that his smarts led to bullying at his past grades, and according to a few of his friends, was very dense when it came to women, which he had no idea what they were talking about. Moving through the crowded halls, he made it to his locker. Putting in the combination, he opened it up and exchanged his books for the next class. The door of the locker was stamped with pictures of him and his friends. Hey Naruto. Speaking of friends. Leaning his head back, he spotted his best friend walking towards him. Mary Jane Watson, though Naruto likes to call her MJ, a cute girl he would secretly admit, having long dark red hair that reached down to her back, had soft green eyes, and a few freckles on her nose and cheeks, which Naruto found really cute. He had known her since first grade. When the two became great friends, it helped that their aunts were friends and lived close to each other by a few blocks, and since then were practically inseparable. Whenever there was one, the other was always nearby. They were so close, people would often joke of them one day getting married, much to the two's first embarrassment, which later became annoyance as they always hear that. Naruto always argued that they were just friends, with MJ agreeing though a bit reluctantly with a small blush at first, much to Naruto's confusion. Currently MJ was the reporter for the school's paper, which given her love for finding out juicy secrets, she took as her honorary mission. "Sup MJ," he greeted as he stuffed the books in his bag. MJ leaned on the lockers next to his, looking at her best friend in amusement. "So tell me, how goes the life of one Naruto Parker?" she asked with a smirk. Naruto glanced at her and scoffed in amusement, closing his locker and leaned on it. "Oh, you know, going to school where the status of one's popularity could mean life or death. Going to boring classes, eating disgusting cafeteria food, and having to deal with a best friend who looks at you like you're tomorrow's latest gossip story. Other than that, I'm good," he said with a shrug, chuckling when Mary Jane elbowed him on the side. She pouted at him, crossing her arms with a huff. "I'll have you know that you aren't tomorrow's gossip issue. You're next week's. Rumor has it that one of the married teachers is having an affair with a student," she said with a grin. Naruto rolled his eyes at that. "Drama. No thanks. MJ, you promised that you wouldn't use gossip to ruin people's lives. Remember when you wrote about that cheerleader cheating on her boyfriend with the guy from the soccer team?" he reminded, giving her a deadpan look. MJ pouted, crossing her arms childishly. "People deserve to know the truth," she argued. "Not at the expense of hurting other," he shot back. Mary Jane grumbled as she was forced to agree with Naruto. "Fine, I'll just write about the mystery meat that's being served at the cafeteria," she muttered. Naruto chuckled at her. "Ah, look Kong, Princess is getting along with her pet kitty cat." The two cringed when they heard a dreadful voice. Turning, they groaned when they spotted Flash Thompson, quarterback for the Midtown High football team, as well as the local high school bully. It was safe to say that Flash had picked Naruto as his daily target of insults and mockery, mostly due to the blonde's strange markings. Flash was a tall, muscular teen with blonde, spiked-up hair and green eyes. His well-chiseled jaw and looks made him a handsome teen to the girls, putting in him a tie with Naruto, much to the former's annoyance. Naruto and Mary Jane had the dishonest pleasure of saying that they were once friends with Flash in elementary and middle school, back when he was actually nice to hang out with, before he let popularity swell his head. When high school come, he figured popularity was more important than friendship. Luckily, Flash never tried to physically pick on Naruto. A glare from the whiskered blonde would make Flash pale and back off, so he settled for insults and mockery. At his side was Elizabeth, Liz Allen, Flash's girlfriend, sending Naruto and Mary Jane an apologetic look. Liz was a cute girl with long dark brown hair, brown eyes, and a tan skin tone. She was a cheerleader and had been dating Flash for a few months. Liz had been friends with Naruto and Mary Jane since middle school, when she had first moved into New York. Even though her boyfriend was a jerk to the two at times, Liz still hanged out with them. Next was Kenneth Kong, Flash's sidekick. Kong, like his name, was a big large guy, shaved head, and could be seen at least 75% of the time eating. Kong was also in the football team and was Flash's lackey, and like the blonde, helps him bully students smaller and weaker than him. However, Naruto and MJ knew that Kong was actually a sweetheart, and only acted mean so he didn't get bullied himself due to his weight. Ah, the life of high school drama. Naruto rolled his eyes at the jock. Every day it was the same old joke. Seriously, his whiskers weren't that strange, and even if it was, the county and area code was used to them. All the way from his childhood, everyone and their mother commented on his marking, the latter on how cute and adorable they made him. Flash's mocking was getting old very fast. Flash. Still with the same routine as usual. I see. You've got to change you material, or you'll see you future wind up as a one-class act, being the starter for the funny clown. Naruto said, making Liz, MJ, and a few close students giggle and laugh. Flash glared at Naruto. Watch it, Parker, or I'll... What? Stuff me in a locker? Dunk my head in the toilet? Steal my lunch money? Naruto asked rhetorically, shaking his head in mock disappointment. Oh, Flash. If you keep going like this, you'll be seeing your life as nothing more than a janitor. That is, if you pass your finals without having me help you study for a whole week straight. He mocked, making all the students around the laugh. Flash's face turned red in embarrassment. It grew even deeper when Mary Jane and Liz laughed as well. He stuttered, trying to come back with a comment, but felt a hand on his shoulder. Looking back, he saw Randolph Robertson, a tall and muscular dark-skinned man with dark brown hair and eyes. Like Flash and Kong, he was wearing a school football jacket and a Midtown High hat. Randolph was a cool guy, nice to everyone and barely ever got mad. He was able to make fast friends just about everyone. Randolph sent Flash an amused grin. Wow, Flash, that's got to burn. He joked, chuckling as well. Face burning red, Flash decided to not embarrass himself anymore and left Kong behind him. Laughing, Mary Jane shook her head and looked at Naruto. Oh man, nice one, Whiskers. Naruto shrugged. Flash is a bully, nothing less. Once he's out of high school, if he gets out he's in for a high dose of reality. Randolph nodded. True that, man. Flash was his friend and all, but the guy needed to learn that in the real world, his personality would only get him into trouble. I see that I missed the show. Let me guess. Naruto put Flash in his place again? Turning his head, Naruto smiled when he saw his other best friend, and the school's local rich boy, Harry Osborn. Harry was a good-looking guy, as well as one rich, making him the eye candy of nearly the whole female student body. His father was Norman Osborn, the president of Oscorp, a multinational corporation, making hundreds of dollars in investments. Harry was popular in school for both his money and looks. He had swept back brown hair and stood at the same height as Naruto. Naruto raised a hand in greeting at him. Yo, Harry, how's my favorite money bag? He said with a wide grin. Harry rolled his eyes with a grin at his friend's antics, knowing he was just joking. One of the reasons Harry liked hanging out with Naruto is because the blonde didn't give a damn about his rich status. Naruto just liked to hang out with him because they were friends. True friends. Unlike other people, Naruto didn't try and get friendly favors out of him, or ask for a few bucks. To Naruto, if you wanted something, you had to earn it through hard work, and not from other people. Exchanging high fives, he nodded in greeting to Mary Jane, getting a nod back. The three made their way to their next class, which Naruto and MJ shared, as Randolph left with his girlfriend, Sally Averill. So, you guys excited about tomorrow? Naruto asked with a wide grin. MJ and Harry looked at him in confusion. What's so special about tomorrow? MJ asked. raising a brow when Naruto sent her a shocked look. "You're kidding me, right?" he asked, looking at her and Harry. His look increased when the two shook their heads. "How could you guys forget? Tomorrow we're going on a class trip to the Oscorp Science Center," he said in excitement, his eyes practically having stars in them. Now knowing what had him so excited, MJ and Harry rolled their eyes fondly. Naruto had inherited his parents' love for science and was always excited to learn more on the subjects, often getting queued up in a trance when talking about things no one but people at his level would be able to understand. While not as much of a prodigy on their fields like them, Naruto had determination and will, and always read books numerous times until he memorized the whole thing word for word. Hell, there was once a time where he would be so deep in his studies, he would ignore his friends and family. It nearly ruined his friendship with Mary Jane, if his uncle didn't knock him out of it. Now, more than a few times, if he ever showed signs of unconsciously distancing himself again, MJ would whack him at the back of his head to pull him out. Harry chuckled in amusement at his best friend, while Mary Jane rolled her eyes. Even knowing Naruto for as long as she did, she still didn't understand his love for science. Well, she did, but she just couldn't keep up with him. Man, Naruto, still the geek as ever, huh? Harry teased, making Naruto pout childishly, making MJ turn her head to the side, hiding her burning cheeks at the cute look. "I'll have you know, this geek helped you pass your finals last year," he pointed out. "And of course I love science. Not only are there so much great discoveries from it, but it's also a honor of my parents." He finished silently, a sad frown appearing on him as he recalled the last time he ever saw his parents again. A flick to the forehead made him stagger back with a yelp. Running his mark, he looked at Mary Jane, who sent him a disapproving glare. She pointed a finger at him like a scolding mother. "What did I tell you, Naruto Parker? You do not go into a depression again. It took me and your aunt and uncle a long time to pull you out if the last one when we were kids, and we're not going through that again. I know you miss them, but it's no excuse to keep mopping around, okay? I swear, if you go emo again, I'll take away all of your ramen," she threatened, making Naruto pale at the fear of his precious ramen being taken. It was the food of the god. Heaven on earth, she wouldn't dare. However, seeing the look in her eyes, he knew she wasn't bluffing. He rapidly nodded in agreement, making MJ put her hands on her hips with a satisfied smile. Behind them, Harry chuckled in amusement at the two friends. They're like a married couple. They can deny it all they want, but nearly everyone knows that they hold feeling for the other. Shaking his head at the two, he spoke up. "So Naruto, your excitement for tomorrow aside, you want to come over? I just got that new Call of Duty game," he offered. Grinning widely at the news, Naruto looked like he was about to accept it, but remembered something, and shook his head with an apologetic smile. "Sorry man, but I promised Aunt May that I get some stuff from the grocery store for her. She's cooking meatloaf tonight, and I definitely can't miss that." He didn't know why his uncle complained about. Aunt May's meatloaf was great. "You want to come?" he offered. Harry shook his head. "No thanks, don't want to intrude. Family dinner isn't my thing," he said, making Naruto frown. He knew Harry's family wasn't as tight as his. Harry's father was a strict man and was always working, ever since Harry's mother passed away. Harry was always invited to have dinner with the Parkers for years, soon becoming a part of the family. "If you say so, man," Naruto said, knowing he wouldn't be able to change the Osborn's mind. Just then, the class bell rang, and the three went to their classes. Later that day, Parker residence. "Aunt May, please," Naruto begged, his face slightly red in embarrassment. Aunt May was a nice old lady, but Naruto, he knew she had a mischievous side to her, mostly targeted at him. He sent a pleading look at his uncle, but received no help as the man just chuckled. Smiling at her nephew, May shrugged. "I'm just saying, Naruto. You and Mary Jane had been friends for a long time, and she has grown into such a beautiful young lady. You better make a move on her before someone else does," she said as she cut another piece of meatloaf and put it on the blonde Parker's plate, whose face was burning red. "Aunt May, how many times do I have to tell you? Mary Jane and I are just friends," he tried to argue, but May just waved him off. "And I'm telling you that things can change. You never know, Naruto. The future is not yet written," she told him, making Naruto groan and hide his face in his hands. He sent a look at his uncle, asking for his help. Ben laughed at the blonde boy's situation. I'm sorry, Naruto, but your aunt's right. He smiled lovingly at his wife, grabbing her hands gently. Believe me, back when we were around your age, May had lots of men chasing her. I was lucky when I did, and asked her out. We later got married, and spent nearly 25 years together. He smiled at her, making her smile back with as much love in her eyes. Naruto smiled at the two, loving them both very much and happy that they were together. He shook his head. Me and MJ? I'm just not seeing it. He denied. Ben chuckled in amusement. We'll just have to see. Rolling his eyes, Naruto finished his meatloaf and washed his plate before making his leave. I'm going down to the lab, he told them. Make sure you don't stay up too long down there. I don't want you falling asleep on that old couch again, May told him. Okay. May sighed. That boy? Ben chuckled, nodding in agreement. Like father, like son, he said as he took a bit out of his meatloaf, holding in a cringe at the taste. He didn't understand how Naruto could eat this. He loved his wife dearly, but her meatloaf was her biggest failure. With the approval of his aunt and uncle, Naruto had turned their basement into his own personal lab. Old boxes were either thrown out, sold in a garage sale, or put in a personal storage. With the big space, he put in several old computer monitors that belonged to his parents and his uncles that he no longer used. Naruto bought the latest Stark Industry server for fast processing. He also had a work shelf at the side for when he wanted to invent something. 2 wide chalkboards which had formulas his father worked on but next got to fix, and had brought the old couch down for when he wanted to relax. There were a few boxes kept down here, holding his father's old books, journals, and equipment, and a few photo albums of his mother's. He also had a radio for music, a small TV for news watching, and even a projector for videos or movies. Sitting down on his rolling chair, he rolled over to his computer. Grabbing an earpiece, he put it on. Main server, online. He commanded, his voice-controlled server turning on. System on. Password code, pouting MJ looks like a chipmunk. Instantly, his monitor turned on, displaying a wallpaper of his parents in their wedding day, smiling at the camera. Smiling at the picture, Naruto silently gave his prayer. I miss you guys. I love you. Shaking his head from the sad thought, he stood up. Play Richard Parker's record where we left off, he commanded. Instantly, a recording played, the sound coming off the speakers placed at the corners of the room. This is Richard Parker. This is entry #15. It is 6:36 p.m., October 5th. I have lately been studying the camouflage mechanism of chameleons. Naruto put on his father's glasses, the blurry vision instantly vanishing and showing clear vision like a camera. He stepped in front of the board, looking at the formulas. All right, Dad, show me what you need fixing. With his headphones over his ears, Naruto stepped off the bus, MJ right behind him. Blue eyes rolling up, Naruto stared in awe at the tall and big building in front of him. It felt like a dream come true for him. He was actually in an advanced science center, home of technology so advanced, they were not seen anywhere else. Even Tony Stark didn't have some of the tech here. MJ chuckled at the look on her friend's face. She knew he was having a nerd moment. This was heaven for him. Somebody pinch me, 'cause I must be dreaming. Oh, he immediately regretted his statement as he sent Mary Jane a soft glare, to which she replied with an innocent look. He grumbled something along the lines of minx as he rubbed his elbow where she pinched him. Naruto, you're drooling. She pointed out the slight drool on the corner of his mouth. As the blonde cleaned his lips, MJ looked around, seeing all the students get off the bus and gather around, the instructor up front. Her eyes also took in the large building they stood in front of. She could now see what had made Naruto days. The building was epically tall as the Empire State Building. It reached all the way up to the clouds. She could barely see the roof edge. Seeing how big it was, she knew it would have taken decades to build such a thing. All right, people, gather around, the teacher called out. Naruto and MJ moved up to the front. The teacher waited until everyone was gathered. All right, we will head inside and meet with our guide. I want everyone to be on their best behavior. At that, she sent Flash and Kong a warning look. She did not forget what they did on their last field trip. Said teens tried to look innocent, and failed. Stick together and don't wander off. Follow all the rules and don't touch anything." Giving the students one last stern look, they headed inside. When in them met the guide, a cheerful Asian woman wearing a lab coat. "Welcome to Oscorp Science Center. This is where Oscorp makes great discovering which work to improve how people live their lives." Beginning the tour, the guide led the group into the building. Naruto and MJ were in awe at how massive the inside was. As the tour went, the guide talked about the history of the center and all the genetic and medical breakthroughs. However, only Naruto, and Mary Jane to an extent, were paying attention. Everyone else was finding it too boring, and were just happy to not be in class. Event he teach was barely holding on to staying away. They went up to one of the upper floors, into a workstation. "Currently, our lab is studying a new experiment. One helped begin by a Dr. Kurt Connors. Cross-species genetics," Naruto muttered, making Mary Jane look at him. "What?" she asked him. Making sure no one was hearing them, Naruto looked at her, his voice low. "Dr. Connors studies cross-species genetics. To, be able to transfer animal or any other species' DNA into another life form. Intentionally creating a new species. It's kind of like a hybrid, or that old chimera story. A being with the DNA of other species." Mary raised a brow at her best friend. "How do you know all of that?" she asked, a bit weirded out. "I read it online. It was also in my dad's journal. He used to work with Dr. Connors in the cross-species project before he died. Though it said that he stopped the project before it got too far. It didn't say why." He finished, looking at the display monitors on the walls as the tour guide explained a bit on the cross-species project. He had been following Dr. Connors' work for a long time, being one of his heroes. At the top of the list was, of course, his father, followed by Kurt Connors, Reed Richards, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, and Otto Octavius. "So what? You're trying to make freaks, like those mutants?" Flash said, causing some muttering amongst the students at the thought of Oscorp creating mutants. Naruto shot him a glare. Unlike others, Naruto didn't see a problem with mutants, and neither did Mary Jane. To Naruto, mutants were just as human as anyone else. The guide shook her head. "No, you misunderstand. We are looking to discover the secrets hidden in the animal kingdom, and reproduce certain genetic attributes." Naruto raised his hand. The woman nodded to him. "You mean, like when a woman gets Parkinson's when the brain cells that produce dopamine start to disappear? However, there is a species, the zebrafish, which has the ability to regenerate cells on command. If you are able to somehow pass that ability to the woman, she will insentiently cure herself." The woman smiled in surprise and impressed at the teen's intellect. "Very observing? Yes, something like that is the goal of our cross-species project. Very good, Mr. Parker." The teacher answered, a proud smile on her face. "One of our school's best and brightest." "Cough nerd cough," Flash muttered, making some students chuckle. MJ shot them a glare. Naruto didn't care. He was proud to be smart like his parents. The guide nodded, still smiling at Naruto. "Well, it is the nerds, as you put it, that help out race advance." She then turned to the group. "Now then, there is something I must check. Please feel free to look around, but do not disturb the workers or mess with anything." With permission to move around, the group separated into groups and went their own way. Naruto, Mary Jane, and Harry, who had been in the back, looking bored, were looking at the cases that held some spiders. "Wow, creepy," Mary Jane muttered as she kneeled closer to take a look. She jumped when she felt something tickle the back of her neck. She glared at the chuckling Naruto. "So not funny, Whiskers," she hissed at him. Shrugging, Naruto pulled her back a bit. "Careful, Red. You don't want to accidentally tumble the cages down and release the spiders, do you?" Shivering at the horrifying thought of spiders crawling all over her, Mary Jane nodded and stepped back. Still chuckling, Naruto looked around the place. "I definitely want to work in a place like this one day," he said, looking at all the high-tech equipment at the back and corners, protected behind glass. Harry chuckled at his buddy. "I'm sure you will one day, Naruto. I'm pretty sure you'll be getting scholarships and invites with your big brain." Mary Jane nodded in agreement. Her friend was really smart, and no doubt would get into high colleges with his grades and smarts. Shrugging, Naruto looked at a monitor next to the spider cases. Says here that the spiders are also part of the cross-species project. They've been injected with some kind of formula, making them radioactive in a sense, and it could be dangerous if bitten by one. MJ shivered as she looked cautiously at the caged spiders as they jumped or crawled on the glass. Naruto saw this and put a hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, Red. These people would be crazy to put experimental subjects out in public. In fact, there's a note here that says that these are just regular spiders. No doubt the experimental spiders are kept in a storage or something, he said, making the redhead sigh in relief. Seeing her calm, he nudged her. Looking at him, she saw him hold up the camera he brought. Haven gotten permission from the guide. How about some pictures? Or are you still camera shy? He teased. She rolled her eyes. She hasn't been shy since she was a kid. Nodding, she smiled at the camera as Naruto stepped back while she posed in front next to the cages. Meanwhile, moving through the scattered students, two men in suits, one carrying a briefcase cuffed to his wrist, made their way to the restricted area. Entering a hall, they stopped in front of a locked steel door, with an electronic pad key on the side. Putting in the entry code, the door slid open. Entering, there were two doors, one at the other end leading into a chamber in blue lighting, and another one at the side. The men entered the side door, where inside her was a hall with a wide display window into the other room. Walking down, they glanced at the window, where men in hazmat suits monitored the machines which were stretching web-like substances. The previous door had been the entry into the chamber to where the experimented spiders were kept. Ignoring the work, they entered the room at the end of the hallway. It was an office to the leader of the project. They were here to receive the progress off. The man saw them as he stood in front of his computer and stood up, nodding and greeting at them with a nervous smile. Without a response, they stood in front of him. We're here for progress report. The one at the left, without the briefcase, spoke, his voice stern. Gulping nervously, the man nodded. He gestured out the side window to where it displayed the machines stretching the web. Well, as you can see, the webbing from the genetically enhanced spiders are showing great progress. They are as durable and strong as cables, yet as light as ordinary webbing. The man cut him off. We are not here for that, Professor. What is the progress in gene splicing? The professor stuttered. We were successfully able to add in the DNA of different arachnid species to 3 out of the 10 spiders picked. Progress is good. And is it compatible with the cross-species project? The man in the suit asked. Here the prof gulped, fixing his collar nervously. Unfortunately, as you know, we have chosen the spider class because it would make it easier to crossbreed. However, when we tried it, the test subjects have all died. As you know, the formula had been taken from Kurt Connor's and Richard Parker's work. However, we have only received the first half of the formula, and Kurt Connors has shown to not know the second half. All of Richard Parker's work has vanished after his death. Without the second half, it is impossible to correct the errors. Mr. Lee, the man said, his voice hard and threatening, making the professor tense. May I remind you that Mr. Osborne is demanding for the project to be finished within a month's time, he said, making the man nod in understanding. Looking at the man at his side, the first suit nodded. The second man put the briefcase on the desk. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small key and uncuffed his wrist. Putting in the combination to the lock, he opened it and turned the case around, displaying what was inside to the scientist. The man's eyes widened at what he saw inside. Reaching in, he pulled out a file. Opening it up, he looked through the papers, his eyes widening more as he looked on. Is this? If you require a substitute, you will use this, the man said. Lee looked at the two in shock. But how did you get this? That is none of your concern, Professor. Just finish the cross-species project, or you're fired, the man said before the two suits left the office, leaving behind the shocked professor. Back outside, Naruto continued to take pictures of MJ, who posed next to a large machine, pointing at it with a smile. Come on, MJ, the camera loves you. Mary Jane laughed in amusement. Okay, Naruto, I think that's enough pictures of me, she said with a smile. The blonde Parker shrugged. Okay then, now you take pictures of me while I pose sexy, he said with a joking grin, making her roll her eyes at him. Harry laughed at that. I'm pretty sure a lot of girls would pay a lot to have a picture of you, Naruto, he stated, with the blonde nodding. However, behind them, Mary Jane narrowed her eyes in annoyance. She knew full well that Naruto was one of the most sought-after boys in school, his handsome looks and kind nature attracting women like flies. Hell, she even saw a few of the female teachers eyed him a couple of times, and she hated it. She won't lie. She herself had a crush on the blonde back when they were kids. She still does. However, any hints she gave Naruto went right over his head. So she stopped trying for a bit. Doesn't mean she was going to let some sluts pin after him. She even knew that Liz had a thing for Naruto, before and even after she began dating Flash. But like always, Naruto didn't notice. Which was a good thing for Mary Jane. Arg. Not only was Naruto so oblivious to a girl's feelings, but his kind personality will no doubt keep pilling in competition, until someone actually gets him. And heaven or hell, that's going to be me, she mentally swore. She just needed to find the right time to tell him. Naruto and Harry looked at Mary Jane as she grinned in an eerie way. Sharing a glance, they shrugged. Girls. So Naruto, how's that job hunting thing going? Harry asked as the three moved to check out the other displays. Naruto sighed. Not good. My only options are pizza delivery or working as a photographer for the Daily Bugle. Snapping out of her daydream, Mary Jane looked at him in confusion. What's wrong with the second choice? The Daily Bugle covers some great news, she said. In fact, she herself wished to work there one day as they were one of the top 5 news businesses in Manhattan. Naruto nodded. That's true. However, it would mean that I would have to work for Jonah Jameson, he said, scoffing as he crossed his arms. He's nothing but an egotistical jerk who only wants to make people look bad. I mean, have you seen his last headline? Orphans cluttering the streets, no room in society. That guy likes writing false news more than he likes hearing the sound of his own voice, he argued. MJ raised a brow at his heated comments. Wow, he must really not like Jameson. Then again, the guy did try and force a comment from him when his parents died. That was not a good day for either Naruto or Jameson. For a 4-year, Naruto sure did had a strong right hook. A painful one, especially when struck in the balls. It was a bad day for Jameson. And it was a bad then turned alright day for Naruto. Nothing like punching a jerk in the balls to make someone happy. Then what are you going to do? You said it yourself, you wanted to earn enough money to buy a motorcycle or something. Still don't know why, she said, muttering at the end, but Naruto heard her. I told you, I hate taking the bus. I either find myself seeing next to a fat guy or a crying baby whose mother ignores it. I just can't deal with it, he said with a sigh, making Harry roll his eyes. Meanwhile, at the back restricted area, one of the workers in the hazmat suit came out of the room. However, the man had forgotten a strict rule when in the lab, always get disinfected. And because he didn't, he had an extra guest. On his shoulder, a small spider crawled down his back and jumped down to the ground. It scurried off, moving quickly around the giant feet of the many people, and made it to the wall. It began climbing the wall and headed to the ceiling. Naruto sighed as he leaned against a ceiling post as he watched Flash and his buddies messing around with each other. Idiots were going to break something in science lab with chemicals and other fragile and dangerous equipment. I'd be surprised if the idiot lives to his 30s or doesn't wind up in jail. Mary Jane and met up with Liz and the two went somewhere else. Harry went to get him and Naruto a soda from a vending machine he spotted out in the lobby. Laying his head back, he let his mind wander. His life was good. Sure, his parents were dead, but he still had his aunt and uncle. He had Mary Jane and Harry. Sure, it was tough growing up. Being smarter than others often led to some bullying moments, but he pushed through them. He often wondered if his parents were proud of the man he was becoming, but knew that no doubt would be. He was going to honor their memories by becoming a great scientist like them. Still, he wouldn't mind some excitement in his life. Some adventure. He remembered when his father would tell him stories of the times he would travel around the world, learning new things, meeting people, and all. Though, as the saying goes, there's no place like home. As his father always says, family and friends are forever, as home is where they are. Harry approached him, carrying 2 cans of Coke. Here you go, man. he said, getting the blonde's attention. Nodding in thanks, he grabbed his can. Popping it open, he took a sip. "Hey Naru." Looking up, he smiled when he saw Mary Jane and Liz walking toward them. "Hey girls," he greeted. "How you doing, Liz?" "Okay. This place is pretty boring though," she said. Naruto chuckled at that. "Hey, science wasn't for everyone." "Well, at least we aren't in school," Mary Jane said, making Liz agree with a giggle. Rolling his eyes, Naruto took a sip of his soda. Unknown to the group above them, the escaped spider hovered over them from a metal bar. Its 8 eyes looked down at them, in particular, the young blonde. Its primal instincts were drawn to him for some reason. Slowly and carefully, it created a web line and began to lower itself down to them. "All right, everyone," looking up, the 4 teens saw the teacher. "Gather around. We'll be heading up to the top levels to see more." A few students groaned at that. Rolling his eyes, Naruto took another sip. Pushing off the wall, he and his friends approached the gathering group of students. He grunted as Flash pushed past him roughly. He glared at the back of the taller blonde's head. "Asshole." He felt an arm wrap around his shoulder. Turning his head, he smiled when he saw Harry. Chuckling, he wrapped an arm around his pal's shoulder too. The students were soon gathered in front of the teacher. "All right then, let's get going." Mary glanced at Naruto as the group began walking. "So Naruto, you enjoying the trip?" Naruto chuckled, nodding as he raised his can up to his lips. "You know it is," he said with a grin. "Well, enjoy it while you can, Whiskers," MJ replied with a chuckle. Naruto scoffed a bit. "Damn well I will," he said, and was about to take a sip, when... "Ah!" Everyone jumped at the scream and snapped their heads back. Mary Jane gave a cry of shock and surprise, jumping back. Harry's eyes widened as a gasp left his lips. Many of the students shouted in surprise while some nearby employees jumped, objects in hands falling and crashing into the ground. The cause? Naruto screamed loudly, his can falling to the ground, spilling the leftover soda as he held his right hand up, showing a spider which was biting the back of the hand. He screamed as pain began to course through his body. Gritting his teeth, he swiped his hand around, trying desperately to get the spider off. With his other hand, he swiped at the spider, successfully pushing it off and sending it flying somewhere, he didn't care where. All he focused on was the great amount of pain coursing through his body. He gritted his teeth hard, his vision blurring. His eyes dilated as his head pounded. He swayed in his step as the room span. Eyes rolling, he could barely hear the worry-filled voice of Mary Jane before he fell backwards to the ground, his vision turning black. Naruto. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 2. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Juubi no Shinju on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.